everyone! Today you will learn about layers of the skin regeneration process, where and how you need to implant the pigment so it stays, and what happens with ink after a period of time, where it goes, and how the laser treatment makes it go away. Skin is the biggest organ of the body, and its main function is to protect the body from foreign substances. If you implant any outside substance into the skin will try to push it out and get rid of it. Skin is made of three main layers: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. And each layer has its own function and is made of its own type of skin cells. Epidermis is made of 4 or 5 sublayers, depending on the area of the body: stratum corneum, granulosum, spinosum, basal, and there is a 5th layer on the palms and on the soles of the feet that's called stratum lucidum. Here I have the layers shown in different colors. This is the epidermis. And this is the dermis, starting in black, and below, I don't have it on the board, but below is hypodermis, which is the subcutaneous fat. What I find interesting about layers and pigment is that in our imagination, all layers are even and ink lays somewhere like a piece of cake. But in reality, it's not like that. All layers are uneven, especially area in between the basal layer and the epidermis. So the area between dermis and epidermis. Plus, the pigment particles, they're all lay in different places and in different amounts. So imagine the particles. I'm going to draw them. So if you magnify the skin, you will see the particles looking like this. Maybe some would get in here. But from the distance, when you look at the skin, it all looks nice and even. Epidermis continuously regenerates and replaces itself every 4 to 6 weeks. This whole layer of epidermis, all these layers, skin cells are being made over here. They slowly migrate up to the top and flake off. And so this whole layer is being regenerated and replaced every 4 to 6 weeks. And this is the reason why the ink has to be placed into the upper layers of the dermis. Into this layer, it's called papillary layer. Younger skin has much faster regenerating cycle, approximately 28 days. Usually younger clients heal faster, have less color left after healing, and their eyebrows don't last as long. I would say my younger clients come back for touch-ups approximately every 8 months. Mature skin has much longer renewal cycle, approximately 6 to 8 weeks. It regenerates very slow, and it retains pigment very well, and the pigment lasts for a long time. Some of my older clients who are up in their 60s come back about every 2 years to have their eyebrows redone, maybe even 3 years. 2-3 years, yes. The skin cells and the skin color are made in basal layer of the epidermis. This blue layer. Skin color, called melanin, is divided into 2 categories: pheomelanin and eomelanin. Pheomelanin is red and yellow, and eomelanin is brown. The amount of pheomelanin does not change throughout life. So you've seen some people have a reddish undertones in their skin, some have more yellow. That's your pheomelanin. but the amount of eomelanin changes under the UV lights. Eomelanin is our natural sunscreen. It protects our skin from the natural ultraviolet lights. So don't do permanent makeup if your client just came back from the beach or going to be on the sun shortly after the procedure. Skin can respond with hyperpigmentation. That's a fancy word for a production of high amount of eomelanin, of brown color. That's how our skin responds to stress after it's just been on the sun or going to be on the sun shortly. So I always ask my clients to wait 2 weeks and space it out, the procedure, either 2 weeks before going to the beach or 2 weeks after. Under epidermis lays dermis. This is the layer below. And dermis is made up of 2 layers, papillary and reticular. Papillary is up at the top, that's where we want to place the ink, and the lower layer, that's where we don't want to go. And dermis is responsible for attaching skin to the body. Dermis has capillary blood vessels, small nerves, and lymphatic vessels. And that is the layer where we do want to implant the pigment, because it doesn't flake off every 4 to 6 weeks. It's gonna stay. We want to implant the pigment into upper layers of the dermis, as I already said, not into epidermis, not deep below into dermis, into papillary layer, which is upper layer of the dermis. And it is very, very important that you don't go very deep. Don't place the pigment too deep, because the deeper the pigment lays in the skin, the more layers of the skin will lay above the pigment and the more change of color you will see. In order to place ink into upper layers of the dermis, you will have to use a lighter pressure at your first appointment. I mean, there is no way that you can find where that sweet spot is. Where is that place where the ink is going to look very nice and it's not going to come off in 1 month, and it's not going to look too blue because it's too deep. Only with experience, working with clients for some time. But at the beginning, when you're first learning, you can use a very light pressure. It's always better for if you go too light than if you go too deep, I would say. And when your client comes back for a follow-up, then you can evaluate the pigment, how much of the pigment is left, what does the color looks like, and then if the color, if you see that it looks nice and there's enough pigment, then you can continue the second procedure with the same pressure. But if you see that there's not enough pigment left, and then you can apply a little bit more pressure this time. And of course, if the color looks grayish blue, that means that you worked too deep and you have to start doing some type of a removal process. That's why I always stress that you have to start out with a lighter touch when you're first learning. So after we implant ink into the skin is traumatized. And the body will try to heal it and get rid of all the foreign substances. The more you will traumatize the skin, the more ink will be pushed out. Anything that gets into the dermis will stay there forever. It will change. Some particles will be destroyed over time with the sun. Some will be taken out by the body, but some particles will remain there forever. Dermis changes all the time. It is constantly being restored by the body like any other part or any other tissue of the body. That is why over time pigment fades, hair strokes don't stay, pigment moves to other areas. The deeper the ink, the harder it is going to be to remove it with anything, with laser. And that happens because, specifically with laser, is because the laser beam loses its energy while penetrating deep layers of the skin. It is easier to remove freshly done permanent makeup because over time, ink falls deeper and deeper and deeper into the skin. Laser removes ink by exploding big particles of ink into smaller pieces, which then can be absorbed and cleared by the immune cells of the body. And the third layer of the skin, which I didn't get to draw on the board, which is called hypodermis or subcutaneous fat. That is a cushion layer of the body that acts as an insulator. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions about what I just told you. I'm going to test you, see how well you understood what I had to say. Where do you need to place your ink so it stays after a couple months, so it's still there after your client comes back? Which layer of the skin? Answer: you need to place into upper layers of the dermis, so-called papillary layer. Second question: if all the ink is gone after the skin heals, what does it mean? It means that you worked too superficial and placed ink into epidermis. You place ink into one of these layers of the skin, and they got totally replaced after 4 to 6 weeks. Or there could be another reason why. You probably also, if you worked, if you created a lot of superficial trauma, then while your body was trying to heal everything, the ink got pushed out during the healing process. Next question: if your client is leaving to go to the beach, will you still do the procedure? Answer: after the procedure, client should not get their brows wet, or the client should not tan for at least 2 to 4 weeks. Tanning can cause hyperpigmentation. If you did not know answer to any of my questions, please listen to this lesson again. And as always, I thank you for listening, and I will see you in our next lesson.